Welcome to the Cardiopulmonary Physical Therapy Journal podcast, the only CPTJ podcast in existence. If you're hearing this for the first time, welcome. We're glad you're with us. If you have heard this before, no, we are not Rich Severin, who was the former host of that, but he is on the podcast today, and we are very excited to talk with him. I do want to say before we even start, because apparently there's a video component to this now. If you notice, I'm in my car, and this is not a very untraditional, non-traditional podcast studio. I have an amazing little 18-month-old boy. If I was doing this in my house right now, as Ashley and Blaze can attest to, because they've seen it in the planning meetings, he would be like right here in front of the camera making noise. So, guys, my podcast studio for a while is probably going to be my car. So I hope that is acceptable for everybody. That this is where I'm going to be hanging out, even though you guys are in like way cooler spaces than me right now. So I am your host, Chris Freyu. I am joined by my amazing co-hosts, Ashley Bergeron and Blaze Robson, and we hope you enjoy what we have for you today. Blaze, I like the Hawaiian shirt, man. What's up with that? Is that like your thing, or what's going on there?
Well, I decided that I would start wearing this Hawaiian shirt to these podcast episodes because at the last section meeting that we had in Utah, I was debating whether or not to bring one. Would it be too informal? Would it look stupid? And so I decided against it. And lo and behold, when I walk into the hall, I see Rich Severin himself wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and I was furious with myself for not bringing it. But I've been a big Magnum PI fan for a little while, so I always get the official shirts from Honolulu and Hawaii. And I
Are you
just
going to
thought
grow
that,
the mustache?
my friend, I've tried so many times, and I've had so many people tell me it's really just not for you. And
Ooh.
unfortunately,
Ooh,
I might have to
brutal.
grow up. I know, maybe I'd have to be 35 like Tom Selleck before I end up getting a mustache myself. But hopefully, this can stay the trend, and I'll be a little bit more colorful with each interview and podcast episode that we do.
I like it. I like it. Ashley, tell us about today's episode. What's in store?
Yeah, so really, really fun episode because we are taking the torch from Rich today. In this episode, we are interviewing Dr. Rich Severin from the University of Illinois at Chicago and the University of Louisiana Monroe. Rich is a physical therapist and ABPTS certified cardiovascular and pulmonary specialist. He also serves as the chief delegate for the American Physical Therapy Association Academy of CVP Physical Therapy. And currently he is working on a PhD in rehab sciences at University of Illinois Chicago, focusing on cardiorespiratory physiology and obesity. He also serves as a topic editor for the upcoming January 2026 special issue on respiratory muscle performance testing and training in the CPTJ. So, this episode kind of encompasses a wide range discussion on the clinical and research relevance of respiratory muscle testing and training across populations, including individuals with cardiopulmonary and neuromuscular conditions, as well as athletes. And we also explore Rich's work as a PT educator and journal reviewer and his creation of educational video content for students. Many of you may know him as the PT reviewer. And now we will get started. Welcome to the podcast, Rich. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me on. Uh, it's kind of a cool moment, not only, starting back the podcast, but, connected with each of you in different capacities. So, I was talking to my students today. It's like, I guess I'm getting older, man. So, but it's just, thanks for having me on here. And I'm super excited the podcast is getting back in the swing of things. And I think it's gonna be great for our membership as well as the profession overall.
Yeah, of course. Kind of full circle moment, you being the interviewee now instead of interviewer.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right.
It
So,
still feels weird calling you Rich,
Oh,
because for people that don't know, Rich was my physiology and cardiopulm professor at Baylor, and so I called him Dr. Severin for years, and now it feels weird calling you Rich, but hey.
I'll let you know that never changes because I have, we're working on a nomination packet for a colleague of mine, and we'd reached out to one of my former professors to help for this award, and I was like, I've been out now for a while. I guess I won't disclose that too much, but it never goes away. So it's still always a little of a weird thing, but I think it's hopefully it's a good sign, of a little reverence or for the position. I guess I did a decent enough job as a professor. So
I'll
um,
always have reverence and respect for you, Rich. So
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
I didn't realize that you guys were student and professor. That's so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I learned everything I needed to know about the kidneys from Rich.
Great, great.
super important. All right, so Rich, I guess we've talked about you being a little bit of a professor, but I know that you're also like a researcher, you're a clinician, kind of wear a lot of hats.
I
Um,
do. Yeah, yeah, that's my
so
baby too.
I just want to know what originally got you into cardiopulmonary physical therapy, and then also just more specifically respiratory muscle training.
That's a great question and a great story. So, and one that I frequently tell my students, especially as they enter PT school about keeping an open mind. So I went to the University of Miami, over the
Go
shoulder,
Canes.
go Canes. Um, but with the kind of expectation understanding that I would be making a single move to South Florida, to work with athletes and specifically with like high school to college athletes, because just from what I saw growing up, in Philadelphia, there was just like I mean, I guess it still is a kind of a lack or dearth of high quality rehab for that transitional athlete going from high school to getting into elite sports, and injuries and stuff that I had, that we didn't get PT. So all right, well, this could be it's like the hotbed area if you want to work in sports. Like South Florida is it, and Miami is kind of it for that. And I didn't know PTs did anything with people with heart or lung conditions, which was a bummer because I loved human physiology. I could talk about it all day and twice on Sundays. And so, I mean, I know PTs did, a little bit of like neurological stuff and stuff with like pediatric patients, but I didn't know we did anything remotely involving, patients of that condition, because I didn't see any of it and I was never exposed to it. All I had ever seen was sports. As a student athletic trainer for a little bit at Penn State before moving to the general option. Was an athlete myself, and then, did my rotations in outpatient ortho, so just never saw it. And by chance, at Miami, I was introduced to a professor, now mentor and friend of mine, Larry Cahalan, who came to Miami, the semester before we had our therapeutic physiology course. And that was the first time teaching at Miami. And that really kind of reinvigorated like the interest. Like I learned that PTs did do stuff with like human physiology and exercise testing. I'm like, this is fantastic. Like I could do this. I would probably be in his office every day after class asking questions, and we're going over different physiological models, just picking his brain as much as I could. And then I followed um, that semester with our cardiopulm course, which was taught by another legend in our profession, Dr. Merrill Cohen, the first cardiopulm specialist. And obviously, if you go through that course, even if you're not a cardiopulm specialist, you're going to take something away, and your interest in cardiopulm, you'll take something away from that. So, and while I was in PT school, I was also a graduate assistant at the University of Miami Hospital, where I worked in the hospital side with a CCS there by the name of Trish Tedrick. And Trish was doing some of the early stuff with early mobility, with getting patients and mobilizing them while they were on vents, and just learning about the CCS and what went into it. And I was like, so those three combined experiences while I was a student, and the mentorship that I would get, because I would also be, bugging Dr. Cohen for questions and just wanting to learn more. And did a little project with Larry as well while I was a student. And I tried structuring my clinicals to get more cardiopulmonary experiences. And yeah, I was sold from this experience, from this mentorship. So, and then I followed that with a residency. And it's crazy because, again, I was hoping to do a single move down to South Florida and stay in Miami and work in, performance sports. And then my residency that I did out of PT school was in Madison, Wisconsin,
Little
in
colder
the
there.
VA, in a heart and lung transplant center. So couldn't be more opposite of an experience. And then I came to UIC here to do my PhD, a little ortho research kind of track, and transitioned to PhD, and I've been here ever since. And then with Baylor and other places. So, but yeah, it all started with just keeping an open mind and leaning into your passions. And I I encourage my students to do that too, just because, while I did pursue things in cardiopulm, I try to expose myself to as many things in PT school as I can till I really found out exactly this is exactly what I'm gonna do. Because I took like a myofascial release elective. Again, complete opposite. I did a pediatrics elective. I wanted to get as much experience as saw all this stuff and like this is what I want to do.
I agree with you on, encouraging students, if there's any listening to this podcast, to keep an open mind because you just never know what you're going to end up kind of doing once you leave PT school, or what you discover there that you're going to fall in love with. I never intended to be an acute care PT that does wound care, and that's what I do now, and I love it. It was not what I intended when I first started. It's where I landed, and if I hadn't kept an open mind, I wouldn't be doing what I do now and really enjoying and loving what I do. So to completely agree with you that students keep an open mind and don't pigeonhole yourself into something because there's a lot that we can do as PTs, a lot more than people realize.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I know that now we have a little bit of a background on you, and you also did an orthopedic residency, so you've been kind of everywhere, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of where the Vitals Are Vitals campaign kind of came from, just my experiences, coming from a VA, hospital where we, heart and lung transplant center, we're checking vitals on everybody, just kind of like part of what you do. And then I came to, UIC, and the whole purpose was me to combine ortho and cardiopulmonary and eventually probably do a PhD. But while I was there, like we're treating patients and I'm looking through their medical history. I'm like, these are pretty much the same patients I saw in Madison, but I'm seeing them for like back pain as opposed to seeing them for heart failure, or cardiovascular disease or COPD. I'm like, why are we measuring vitals on these patients? It's like the same person. So that kind of combined experience, and then that's kind of where bariatrics came from too. But we get this whole separate conversation. But yeah.
Hey, you've done a lot. And you're also quite well known as the PT reviewer as well, which I know I watched a lot of your videos, and that's kind of how I got to know you. And I think a
Oh,
lot of our
awesome.
listeners may know you.
Got
Do you want
a
to
fun story
talk
about that too.
a little bit about that? So
Yeah,
we
there's a
kind
lot of different ways we could go down that.
of,
It's so funny. Because we started that account. Actually, I don't know if Greg Todd still comes down to Miami to talk about social media, and he came down to Miami. I had already started PT Reviewer in PT school. I made a Twitter account, made a website, an old blog about just putting my ideas out there, and he just that kind of awakened oh, we should really be doing this because it's a great way to get stuff out. And it's interesting, I've made some amazing connections and collaborations and had opportunities through, being my own advocate and my own publicist and getting stuff out there that I would never have been imaginable. We can talk about that too. But a funny story, I think this is in 2014 in CSM or maybe 2015. It's early in my career. I had was walking with a colleague of mine, TJ Janicki, around CSM's conference floor. And I introduced myself, like, hey, Rich Severin, like PT reviewer. And they're like, who is PT? Like, what is that? I'm like, oh, it's like my social media account. They're like, oh, okay, word. And then now people recognize me from that. So I'm like, that's kind of cool. So despite being I call myself the anti-influencer. I don't do things to make my content super, but it's crazy because I give people tips on how to make their content more popular and leverage different SEOs and stuff. But I want to keep mine, pure of that, I guess. But yeah, PT reviewer and the videos that people watch. That's kind of interesting story too. When back in the day, when I was a student, uh, to get good videos to study, we would always record our professors in PT school, with permission, of course, with permission. And I'd actually had uploaded, a bunch of ours for our class. This is going way back. This is before I don't even remember the website. It was not Dropbox. It was like before Dropbox. And we'd uploaded it so we could all access it later to study while we're on clinical. So we have like a whole library of it. And while I'm teaching my first semester here at UIC, my students had asked, like, hey, like Dr. Severin, like, because I'd give them permission to film like while I'm there. And they'd ask, like, hey, could we just have like an afternoon with you after class and just like sit through and just go through all the techniques, just record them, and then like we can have them for reference. And I'm like, well, okay, sure. So we went through everything, one take, by the way, too. No retakes on any of these technique videos. And it was just shared internally because they're still students. And once they graduated, I asked them all individually, like, hey, like, would you be okay if I just post this online? Like, it's not monetized. I don't intend or have any plans to make money off of it. It's just their democratization of information. And they were all for it. Some wanted their name, some didn't want their name on there. And now it's like it's crazy to see where that pops up and being used. Like, and when I teach at some other universities as an adjunct, and so it's like, hey, it's the guy from the videos. But yeah, it's been it's turned as like a student resource. Just for my students, it's now becoming a resource for a ton of students, and exactly how it's supposed to be, just like open access, like anyone can use it and leverage the content there to get that refined practice. But it all goes back to my students, who came up with the idea of making like a higher quality recording for those videos.
I'm curious, just to kind of bring it, full circle back to the podcast. Obviously, the CPTJ podcast was your baby originally, right? And
Yep.
we're now taking it over. But it sounds like, the way you're talking about kind of how you ended up in the PT reviewer situation, that you were always sort of like keenly aware of like, blogging when that was becoming a popular thing, and then recording videos and YouTube, and eventually like, Facebook, like all that kind of stuff. Was podcasting something that you recognized was like an up and coming thing and was going to
Yeah.
be a big thing, and you sort of wanted to have your hand in that as well? And just because of the fact that you were into the cardiopalm, arena, is that sort of how that manifested and came about?
That's
Good
a great.
question.
That's
a good
also
question.
yeah. I don't know if I've been ahead of the curve of a few things. 'Cause we started doing this like 2016. At some of the early, and I think the first season was 2017. We started, published. But yeah, Sean Collins was the editor in chief at the time. He brought me on to be the emerging media editor for some of the stuff I had done with Vitals Revital, and I was also on the PR team for it's a different term than it is now, like visibility for the Academy. And it brought me on to help because the goal is get the journal index in PubMed. That's our Medline. That's our big thing, and raising awareness and getting information out. So we initially had started with a blog. I was like, well, I'm going to do a podcast too. I could interview authors, and because it's one thing to read through a paper, and like go through the discussion and maybe read other papers, but like to hear from the author, we thought would be pretty cool. It's also a way to like, as you saw with even other interviews we did not with just authors, just like, I guess the buzzword term is platform other people, but to raise awareness of other people doing really cool things in our field that like maybe you haven't heard of. And so that was kind of the idea behind it. And yeah, it was crazy because it was not as crowded of a space as it is now, certainly post COVID, when everyone was listening to podcasts during COVID, right? But and it was like it was I would say low tech, but like what was out there now. I was talking to you guys leading into the show. We were using Skype. That Skype doesn't even exist anymore, right? We were doing a Malto call recorder to grab the audio. Now that's like a default feature in Zoom and a lot of things to have it auto recorded. So, but yeah, it was a super fun experience though, and yeah.
I guess we can go ahead and get into a little bit on this special issue since we're talking about CPTJ right now. So you're leading the upcoming issue, and it's on respiratory muscle performance testing and training.
Yep.
And just wondering why now? What is the inspiration for the focus?
Was that pun intended?
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Very good. So, there's really been, I'd say a groundswell really of, interest in this area, and it's been really exciting, inspiring, you might even say, uh,
Ah,
to kind of see because we presented this at CSM 2 years ago, or soon to be 2 years ago in 2024. And I presented a similar talk with Larry and a few others, Barb Smith, Danny Martin, and Nate Hellier from Mayo Clinic in 2018. And just to see how many people were aware of what respiratory muscle testing and training were in 2018 compared to what we did it with my colleagues, Aubrey Little, Haley Bento, Chris Mariales. Um, in 2024 where we've seen like we just poll the group just hey how many of you guys like know what this is or use it and was the whole class had their hands on. Now a lot of them were Miami people, which where it's like a big thing.
Mhm.
But there's definitely, I think, a growing interest. And I think COVID, because of the breathlessness that persists in some patients with, post-COVID syndrome and even acutely, um, of course, but there's just been an increased interest and there's been more publications. And we felt the time was right. And we've had a lot of success with these special issues of drawing attention to the journal, and also just letting people know that, hey, we're a destination for publications in these other areas that people maybe not think about, for like human physiology. So that was the impetus behind it, and I had recently had published that part of the ACSM guidelines, so then now that's out there. So we felt it was just time to encourage submissions, and we've had some great papers. I'm super excited to share some of the stuff that's going to be coming out. There's some that's been already published ahead of print. So initially we're going to publish it in January's issue. We have extended it. So if you're on the fence of getting something wrapped up, like you still have until the end of December now to get your papers, and myself included, have a couple papers I've been kind of dragging my feet on. Um, but yeah, I mean, now being the lead editor for that issue, just yeah, it's been cool to see because I know that there's pockets around the world where it's done, more often, and certainly within the United States, there's pockets in Miami, there's pockets in Colorado, in Utah, we have a group here in Chicago, and a few other places. And just seeing, learning about other researchers, in Buffalo as well, Andy Ray's group, and Florida, with Barb Smith, but just seeing, there's more and more people that are doing this. It's just kind of cool to see it grow because it's wild to me, as someone who's been, doing this since I was a PT student, that it's not a mainstay in practice, and it's just a form of exercise. Like I think it's, I mean, we could depends how deep in the conversation we want to get, but breathing has this kind of like, I don't know, it's almost like a mysticism. People kind of make it more than it needs to be sometimes. And it is pretty simple when you get down to what you're testing and what you're training, and the principles that we use for testing and for training for any other muscle. It's pretty much the same that we use here. And I think, when I teach this to people in my courses or my students, trying to unpack that and make it as simple and more relatable. But to answer your question, yeah, there's an increased interest in it, and if you look at publication bibliometrics, it's really skyrocketed since COVID. So we felt, especially since having a previous special issue on COVID, which was very successful, Todd Davenport's leading that one, it would follow a good logical sequence to have that one, keep the momentum of submissions to the journal, and it's been fabulous.
Yeah, kind of going back to what you said about having this sense of PT student, I kind of felt that whenever I left Miami because it was just like a basic thing that I thought all PTs did was like inspiratory and expiratory muscle training or just respiratory training in
Mm.
general. And then once I left, I realized mainly RTs were doing it other places or nobody was doing it at all. So I think it was really cool to be able to experience that as a PT student and then also bring that a few other places. And then also realize that there is such a need for it other places. And some areas don't even have devices, like not even speech or anything like that.
Yep.
So um, it's kind of exciting that you also have a course on it and anybody from anywhere can learn about it.
Yeah, yeah. Those courses I've taught it. I've done it a couple different ways. Like we'll do it with I'll partner with an organization that goes out in National Jewish Hospital in Denver, like train their PTs and OTs, or I'll do it through a state association. And I'll do a couple private ones, like we did one in Chicago in September, and it was kind of cool to have like a mixed bag of people because I had some speech language pathologists, I had some PTs in there as well, and like speech language pathologists, approach it from a very different lens and a very different angle. And it's just kind of cool because it's an area of practice that I think, we as PTs really could, I'm hoping this becomes more of a mainstay just because it's one of those things. I mean, dyspnea, shortness of breath, one could have many mechanisms that cause it, but if it's a respiratory muscle, testing or performance issue, it can be treated. And being able to take away shortness of breath, like it's something we don't take for granted because it's something we do from our very, very first breath to our very last breath. You never have to think about it, hopefully. And if that's taken away from you, where it's a very vital function, no pun intended, is becomes very taxing. It changes your whole life. It really does. So to be able to give someone a meaningful intervention that addresses a primary issue for them, with huge impacts on quality of life, that has a very low. I mean, you're talking like 5 minutes at most per session, twice a day, and you can do it seated. I mean, that's a game changer, and like that, if that's something that we could get in the hands of more PTs, I think it could do a lot of great things.
Do you see value in it more in the outpatient setting or the inpatient setting, or does it really matter? Because I know for where I work, we work with a lot of respiratory therapists. They do a lot of that kind of stuff, or they're focusing obviously like mostly like on the lungs and
Yeah.
respiration, all that kind of stuff. Whereas, at least as an acute care PT, I'm more just like getting patients up, moving, determining discharge, that kind of thing. So, I feel like that's being managed well, maybe not at every hospital, but at a lot of hospitals, but obviously not so much once the patient's out of the hospital, they're on their own, they're, going to outpatient PT, things like that.
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. I mean, I think it's got a role in a few different areas. The training, obviously, you're probably not going to make major inroads in terms of improvement. Though there's studies that suggest like we can see performance changes within like a week, of training, because there is we think a neurological component to it that can be, quickly adapted, especially for patients like weaning from vent. Sometimes it can be an issue. But I think it's, got a place in outpatient, cardiopulmonary rehab, as well too. So I think it's got value in different settings, but maybe from a different approach because of just the time constraints typically for an inpatient side. But it's got uses. I mean, in athletic populations and performance athletes, singers, there's a role, for neurological populations. I mean, it's again, the way I put it's a muscle. If it's weak, right, I got to strengthen it, right? And the
Right.
only way to know if it's weak is to test it. It has, weak muscles can show up in a lot of different settings, different populations.
One
Very cool.
really interesting thing that I learned about the other day was music therapy using harmonicas for
Yeah,
inspiratory muscle training.
yeah,
And
Ah,
kids too.
somebody,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah, somebody I had was a musician and obviously was very sick in the ICU. He's been there for like 2 months. And they brought in a harmonica because he didn't want to do any of the other like breath work that we had. I personally, where I am, I don't think that we have IMT devices, at least not available to PT.
Well, let me know. I can hook you up with some.
Yeah,
So
no,
yeah.
I was shameless plug right there. So I actually have been like getting him to do the harmonica while I'm setting up everything because I'm like, oh, I have this device at least. And honestly, it's really nice. He plays it quite well. So it's kind of like some background music while I set up his room. But that was something that
That's
was kind of
fantastic.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Didn't even
fantastic.
think.
Yeah, and for kids too, like harmonicas, kazoos can definitely be, a way to do it, But yeah, no, especially harmonicas can give you. I mean, there'll be a tapered flow style resistance, but anything to get patients binded. Did you have them play any Blues Traveler with
Oh,
the
no,
harmonica?
no.
That might be pretty
Um,
advanced. It might be pretty advanced for
I'll
him.
have to ask next time I go in and see if he knows it. I'll keep you updated on my
Hmm.
findings.
But it is an interesting, thing to use because if you think about it, just, whether you're blowing in or excuse me, breathing in or blowing out,
hmm
the longer that they can maybe sustain a note or sustain that, and they get that audio feedback as well. So
Yeah.
it's not just, just seeing something visually, but they're hearing, oh, look, I can blow this note for, 10 seconds, and then maybe, in a week they're 15 seconds, whatever the case is. So it's interesting you get that feedback in another way that almost can encourage the patient to like, hey, how much more can we do? How much longer can we do it? So it's a neat little trick.
Yeah, maybe an idea for the future doing respiratory muscle training with music feedback, even if it's not like a harmonica, just like some sort of device. Okay. Well, I guess that's kind of a niche thing. And speaking of niche things, are there any themes or gaps that you've noticed in the literature that you're really hoping to address with this issue?
Well, with this issue, oof, I mean, there are some gaps. I don't know if it'll get addressed in this issue.
Mhm. Oh, I
Um,
mean like respiratory muscle training gaps. Doesn't have to be harmonicas if that's
oh
what.
no, no, I meant like there are some significant gaps in recent. I don't know if we'll
Oh,
get these papers in this issue
okay,
because
gotcha,
we have a
gotcha. Just
project we're
wanted to
working on.
clarify.
Yeah, yeah. What we're hoping, and we have a nice review paper we're putting in on just like I think contextualizing for PTs that's going to come through hopefully about like what it is and what it can because there are guideline papers out there and again like we have the thing in the ACSM guidelines but putting it more in more spaces for PTs to know what it is and what it can do and expected kind of improvements and stuff like that. So, but also just seeing the different settings that it can be used because it has huge value, obviously, for patients of cardiopulmonary health conditions, but for patients of chronic neurological conditions, spinal cord injury, ALS, MS. You go down the list, in CP, I mean, any chronic neurological condition. It has huge implications because if you remember from PT school, right? The number one cause of mortality and morbidity in patients with chronic neurological conditions is pneumonia, and that's primarily from an inability to generate or sufficient cough strength. So it has huge implications there. And a good colleague of mine, Annie Palermo, also another UMiami graduate. I don't know if she was
Mhm.
around when you were there or involved.
No, but I know of her.
Yeah, everyone knows Annie. She's
Yeah,
awesome.
of course.
She's awesome. But she has a lot of work with spinal cord injury, and it's got huge implications. So I'm hoping from this issue that people see the different settings and different populations because it's not just an intervention for patients with cardiopulmonary conditions. Um, just like muscle strength testing is not just or training is not just an intervention for orthopedics, right? We use it in every domain, right? It's the same kind of concept. So I'm hoping people view that it's something that you can use in a lot of different settings, and it may be something worth exploring, in your practice.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, there are some significant gaps in the literature that we're hoping to kind of, explore. Like one is like we don't have a good equation that will estimate, respiratory muscle strength or endurance based off just the number of repetitions. So, there's, like for example, we've got ways to test or estimate, 1 rep max from someone's 10 rep max, right? It's a very tons of different tables and equations that do that. We don't really have that for respiratory muscle testing or training. So we are hoping to, work on that. We got a project kind of underway here in Chicago to do that, but I don't think that will make this paper or this issue. So
Well, people still have a lot of time to submit, I guess 2 months, so
yeah,
you never know.
there.
Okay. What are some like barriers that you think will prevent people from implementing this in their setting, whether that be inpatient, outpatient? Maybe you've addressed them before, but just for our listeners.
Yeah, there's two big ones. One is it's the old adage like healthcare is political, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not from that lens, but from like the interior
Mm-hmm.
politics, right? Internal politics. That yeah, there are turf battles between other professions that use it to do with respiratory therapists. Sometimes are apprehensive that PT is doing anything involving the lungs or
Mm-hmm.
breathing. It's like, hey, like that's part of my training, bro. But uh So there's that side, and that's not every respiratory therapist because some of them are great. Our chapter president is also trained as a respiratory therapist and is also obviously fantastic PT.
Mhm.
But so there's that side, uh, and so I think that is one that negotiate and navigate just with temper your actions of wisdom. But the other is cost. So we actually provided in our session in 2024 a little guide uh, of different devices that people could utilize at different price points because, excuse me, you could use I mean there's so many different devices now on the market. They're all pretty good, but obviously everyone's price points are a little bit different. You don't have to necessarily spend the, $2,500 micro RPM, device I use in a research setting, right? Very validated and strongly calibrated device. There's devices, that are $400, right? And then even for trainers, right? Aspire Respiratory Products, has, a wide range. Power Breathe has a wide range of products out there. So it's about finding, the systems that work in terms of product, that work best for your population and what you're trying to accomplish. The nice thing is, though I do consult for Aspire Respiratory Products, I'm an equal opportunity, I guess, tester or trainer in terms of this stuff.
Mhm.
And I use a lot of their, products for different research studies. And what I've gathered from my experience, both with Power Breathe or Pro 2 or Aspire, that they're all pretty like good with working with clinics. So I encourage, if you're interested in like getting a program off the ground, like just reach out to and you have questions about cost, reach out to those like device manufacturers, and see if they can work with you, because more often than not they want to. And I know the people there that they're really passionate about like helping institutions with like finding ways to get devices in patients' hands. So but cost is a big one, and there's ways to do it more efficiently with filters so you can reuse devices and stuff like that. But yeah, from what I've seen, it's been cost, um, internal politics,
Mhm.
and then just clinician knowledge, I think is the other big one. That's why I've been trying to evangelize, I guess, the profession as much as I can by doing as many of these, seminars or talks, putting things in, the guidelines for ACSM, putting it in places. I think that was a big one, getting it in the guidelines, just because, whenever people think of exercise and like the recommendations, gold standard, for testing, for training, people all just almost reflexively say ACSM guidelines. But for years, it was not included. So it's not, I think, on people's front of mind if it's not in, the Bible really for exercise. People are going to think about it. So putting it in there, I think, will hopefully help people recognize this is a form of exercise that can be done, and help a lot of patients.
And hopefully maybe standardize it a little bit more across education,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I know that on the call for abstracts, it kind of mentioned a little something about wanting some topics on best practice in the clinical setting, academic setting. What sort of gaps do you think there are in the PT curriculum, like as a
Oh,
PT student with the muscle testing and training that you've
oh,
seen? Because I know you teach a lot of practitioners like in the setting, but like you also teach students, and I'm sure your students get a lot of information on IMT from you, but maybe that you've seen in other schools or settings.
I
There was
thought you
no
were
gaps in
asking
my
me.
education, none whatsoever.
Right.
Everything I needed to know, Rich taught it.
I'm
Right.
not, I'm not paying him to say that. Not checking. Um,
Okay, okay.
No, but I thought you were gonna give me like the $1 million question. What gaps do you see in PT education? Like, how much time do you got?
Oh,
But
okay. I mean,
no,
we could go either way, but we are on a
um,
time
yeah,
limit.
yeah. But no, I'm kidding. I think we do a pretty good job of educating the PTs in most programs. So, in all programs. Um, but I think the main knowledge or gap or curricular gap in respiratory muscle testing and training is that like a lot of people just aren't, like, if you weren't exposed to it, you're not going to be able to teach it. It's just like kind of as simple as that. And and the people that do it, it's kind of in, again, it's in kind of in clusters. Like I was very fortunate that I went to the University of Miami, where it's part of what we do. And I've had colleagues of mine who've taught with me at Baylor or taught with me at other places, Soft College, or I've been on the teaching teams at Hawaii Pacific, or even people I brought here at UIC that be like, yeah, we didn't learn this in PT school. The fortunate thing is from coming through our teaching teams, because at Baylor, for example, we would bring in expert clinicians from around the country. And a lot of them, we had a nice mentorship kind of program where I try to give them a little bit more each time, or talk to them about what they wanted to do long term for teaching. And they would take that, like, some like the respiratory muscle testing, and bring it to where they're at. So in an area that I'm super proud of, an institution that's done a fabulous job with teaching, and both like from clinical practice, University of Utah, like Haley Bento, was a great friend of mine, this awesome person, and had taught with me at Baylor for a number of years, and brought Deb's now Slay, Deb, formerly Deb Coaster, also Miami person, go Canes. We're everywhere, but and was her resident, and she saw, hey, like this is great stuff, and now she's not only teaching it, she's like leading like research projects in it. She's like doing awesome work in Utah, and their whole team is using it. So seeing that, so I think, I think what was helpful for me, I've been at institutions, I've been open-minded about having, like, bringing other people in to teach, and having those people go elsewhere. But I think that's going to be a big part of getting it out there, of like people, getting plugged in, or finding ways for those hubs where it's taught to get that out to other people too. So I think, but yeah, I think that because the biggest gap is that people just don't know it. And if you don't know it or have never been exposed to it, then you're not going to teach it. And I think it's just about getting it. And that's why I've been so like passionate, like, to give resources out, to collaborate on research projects on respiratory muscle testing or and training, teach courses, get papers out, and make my papers open access so people can can have them available to them. Because the more, the more we lower the barrier to entry, I think it's going to help with the uptake of knowledge. So that's just my bias. I'm a big on just, there's no, a democratized way of viewing, information and content that we can share. So I benefit from it. So.
Well, I mean, you have published a good bit in this area. And I'm wondering if you have a paper that you're just most proud of, or that you think has impacted people the most.
I, I guess because I have a couple papers that I'm pretty proud of. The paper I'm still the most proud of is my first one in 2017, which I published with my advisor, PhD advisor Shane Phillips. But I'd say the one that's gotten, well, there's two. Man,
You can pick both. It's okay.
It's like picking your favorite child.
There's more than a couple. There's more than a couple. So obviously the blood pressure screening paper, I mean, that won me an award, the Dorothy Briggs Award. I'm looking at how frequently or not people are measuring blood pressure, and that's been cited and has been replicated as different types of studies in different settings in different countries. And then that the follow-up call to action paper, which what makes me proud of that one is exactly what I had intended. When we started out the Vitals or Vitals campaign, was to raise awareness about like the importance of screening, especially blood pressure, the vitals at least at every evaluation. And all throughout that campaign, I mean, that's some pretty horrible things said about me in terms of what like
Oh,
how
no.
important I thought it was, like, but like, oh, this guy just wants us to add other things to the exam. I'll know when to measure. I'm like, okay. But listening to people about, okay, like what are the barriers? And our research in that PTJ paper, the first one, identified them, like why people don't screen. The big one was just not having guidelines to go by. It's kind of that Schrodinger's cat, or like Schrodinger's box, or the one with the cat in the
It's
box,
a
right?
cat. I think
Yeah.
it's a
It's a
cat.
cat, right?
It's
Thanks,
a
Liz.
cat.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Liz. Where, if you don't know what's in, if you're afraid of making a decision, you'll avoid making one, basically, if you don't know how to
Hmm.
handle the situation. So, and I think that was a big reason for why, I mean, our research supports why people don't. So, and as we were like, as we had published that one, through PT Review, we're in a campaign engaging with people and learning, and put into that paper like answers to the questions that everyone was looking for, and then bringing in like Ahmed Sabahi, who's a good colleague of mine here at UIC and at South College, and was formerly at Baylor University. Um, to talk about exercise responses, and Sarah Arena, who's one of my good friends and colleagues at Oakland University. And then I brought in the people that were also publishing in this space, which is another good kind of example that, hey, science and research, you can collaborate, and everything has to be a rivalry. Like you bring
Hmm.
in your colleague, people who
Hmm.
are publishing in the area on shared projects, and then make an even better project. So that's what that paper kind of became. And what makes me proud is hearing from people, because I have the bibliomet. I can see where it's been cited in other places. It's got a ton of ton of citations. But talking to people, how, hey, like I use this paper in my PT education, or residencies and fellowships that use it as their reference guideline for how to manage and triage blood pressure. And that's like was the whole goal all along of the Vitals for Vitals campaign, not just to raise awareness, but then to give people resources to help improve practice. And then I not put it behind a paywall. We paid to make that open access. Our university supports it here, which is great. So like that there's a lot of papers I'm very proud of, proud of all of them. But the story behind that paper, because we also linked in there the Vitals or Vitals technique videos, which were self-funded from the t-shirt sales that we created. That one, I created it to kind of raise awareness, make some fun, but also I thought like we could make some money from this and use that money to, create high quality educational resources, and make them free, and put them out there so people use them. And then we link those technique videos in our publication, so people not only got like, you know, descriptions of what to do. They could go check those things, and they're there for free online. Kind of a cool thing. Just in passing, another Miami colleague of mine was teaching um, a seminar out in Kenya, and I saw like a photo on like Facebook of her doing it, and it's a picture of like the videos that were linked in that paper, and so just seeing like how that
Wow.
gets out there. So yeah, so that paper is one, and just the story behind it. It's not my most cited. It's got a lot of citations, but if I imagine the because looking at the downloads and where it's been used, and how it's been used, like that just makes me super proud, because it's the whole mission of the Vitals or Vitals. Like I don't need to convince cardiopulmonary PTs to measure vitals, right? I need to convince the 90% of the remaining of the profession that don't, right, maybe, or aren't cardiopulmonary PTs, and to see how well that's been received, and used. It's just awesome. So yeah, that's one I'm very, very proud of.
That that leads me to one question that I have. So myself, I'm trying to make videos just for the WVU health system, like sterile
Yep.
precautions, and then I look at watch your videos, and I'm trying to like pin down format. Like how do you end up formatting your videos whenever you end up disseminating this information? Like are you inspired by maybe another clinician that's done something
Sorry.
similar, or is it just like trial and erroring all of this stuff? Because it's a lot more difficult than you'd imagine to do something like this.
Was it an inspired pun?
Yes.
We keep track of how many breathing jokes we make here.
Oh yeah.
But so are you talking about the technique videos or like the lecture videos that I've
I
made?
would I would say, I mean, both. I mean, they're for different audiences and different purposes, but
Yeah.
I still
Well,
think it's
sorry. The lecture videos I've made, it's kind of wild. I made those for my students initially, and then I was like, all right, I think people, students. Well, it's got another story too from Miami. Was Sean Hunt still there at Miami, Dr. Hunt?
Uh, he retired, I think my my last year there.
Man, I'm getting old.
So 2023,
Um, but
2024-ish. He was the best.
yeah. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Dr. Hunt's awesome. But he even this is we were doing some of this stuff back in like early 2010s. It was called the alt tens, right? Was it time frame for that? Anyway, when I was in PT school, um, that he would like do recordings of videos or lectures for us to have, and then in class we would go and review things. This is a great format because I can go back and reference this stuff. Even after I graduated, I was able to use the study guides. And what I found with our traditional like model here, even in person here at UIC, I was like, man, like once my students kind of graduate, it's kind of it. Like they have like maybe the paper lectures, they don't have me talking, and actually like the actual lecture. They may have an audio recording. And even if, at Baylor, like it was internal. So I'm like, all right, well, like I don't really, I mean, the universities pay me enough. Like I don't need to make money off of this. So I just publish them out loud for anyone to use. So those, are done with me like in, teaching the students. That's why it's very more, it feels like I'm just talking, like giving a lecture because that's kind of how it's designed and intended. It's not like I'm making a YouTube video. I'm making a video to like teach my students that just happen to put on YouTube, and anyone can use them. And the technique videos, it's just like just to kind of keep it simple and just break down techniques. And I know I was not a a radio host or like a high level actor, but I was a theater kid growing up. Like my mom was in theater. I was a all city choir performer
Oh,
many years ago.
wow.
Um, so I guess I have a decent like say like sense of how to position myself and like get through takes real quick. I don't get a lot of like stage fright, but yeah, in terms of it's really just simple. Like sometimes it's just like, I'll have a microphone, I'll have my little like illustrating tablet and, a couple monitors and kind of just go. And then for the videos, like single set up, make sure my camera angles are good and just kind of go and like try to do them all in one take. So, because I can't pay people. I don't make, they pay me well, not that well to pay, well, it's usually just my friends filming in them. So, or my students.
Pays to have creative friends.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely true.
Yes.
Definitely true.
So, whenever a clinician is listening to this episode or a student or whoever it may be, and they read this special issue as well, what's one practical thing that you hope they do differently next week or they take away from this?
That respiratory muscle testing and training, again, it's no different than exercise testing and training or strength testing and training for any other muscle. Don't make it more complicated or more mysticized than it needs to be, right? You've been doing a lot of these things for probably even before PT school, maybe in your own personal practice as through exercise training. You can absolutely do these things. We use different terms, right? Slightly different devices, but it's way more approachable than you realize.
Great. Well, I'm excited
And
about this special issue. Should we do the bonus round too of questions that we
We
have?
have to.
Sure.
We have to be
Okay.
unique somehow.
I think. Blaze, do you want to take it away?
I'd absolutely love to. So
Okay.
this is actually something I was talking about with one of my coordinators today. In your opinion, what is the most underrated clinical outcome measure? Because there's 55 billion of them out there, and we're
Man,
told to use like 10.
are we talking about like a form or like a performance-based outcome measure?
Do you have like a performance and maybe a questionnaire?
So performance-based, you know, people like the 30-second sit-to-stand test. Like that's one of my money tests. I use that every day in bariatrics and a 2-minute step test. I gave two.
Okay.
Short and to the point, and it gets more people up to their physiological max than a 6-minute walk test, I'd say.
Hmm.
Because
Interesting.
you have vertical displacements. Well, not vertical displacement, but you're marching in place. So you can get pretty close, even though it's not a true anywhere close to a VO2 peak or VO2 max measurement. It gets you pretty close to a max effort. So I think those two probably biased. I do them frequently in bariatrics. But yeah, I'd say those two, gives you great data for both measurable and trackable. For a questionnaire, man, so many. Uh, one that I think could be used more that isn't the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index.
Okay.
Um, that is, I mean, it's a pretty illuminating thing reading it sometimes, like what patients are like going through, and getting some quantifiable data on sleep quality. I had my students do that at Baylor in their and at ULM in their therapeutic physiology course, to like, or I think we call it health promotion fitness management at Baylor, to like and give a objective score of what their sleep quality actually is. So I say that's an underrated one, and I think sleep health promotion is kind of an underrated thing in our profession for sure.
Gotcha. And
100.
so, go ahead.
Oh, I just said 100%,
Oh.
especially in the ICU. Nobody gets sleep.
Oh yeah. Oh
Mm-mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, if you're looking to sleep at a hospital, you might as well pay just as much to go to a hotel because it's not happening. You won't get any mints on your pillow either. I promise you that. Because
No,
I've
no.
looked in the patient beds. They're not there. Because
Yeah.
I need a little treat sometimes too.
You can bring some in place.
I'd love to bring mints. I
Yeah.
won't eat them myself because I think mint only belongs in like toothpaste and gum.
It's not
That's a
okay.
bit. I know. Hard opinion. So, okay, what's one book that every PT should read if we're doing something like this in the world of cardiopulm?
It should be the 12th edition of the ACSM guidelines, exercise testing and prescription.
Just some light reading before
Just some light
bed.
Yeah,
reading.
right before bed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Talk about needing good sleep.
Yeah.
That'll put you right to.
yeah. But one that I think in academia, a lot of PT should probably read, and even students, is a book that I read as part of my higher education leadership fellowship called The Great Upheaval, which kind of talks about some of the changes that have happened across higher ed that I think is really insightful about where things are going to probably go in higher ed that we're seeing now, and even in PT education now. So I think, you know, um, you know, I think for cardiopulmonary for sure, the ACSM guidelines, but as well, if you're in academia, the Great Upheaval. I couldn't say more great things about that book. Really, really great book.
Nice. And if you're getting ready to sit down, do some deep typing, what coffee, tea, drink are you ordering to get yourself set up? What you doing? I
Well,
gotta know.
it's kind of like I used to not drink coffee until my PhD, and I drink it kind of all the time. But Lavazza, it's an Italian coffee. It's like my kind of comfort coffee, or just an espresso.
Okay.
I'll make my own at home. But I my students, they drink these Celsiuses now. It's like, no one drinks just coffee anymore. It's like it's got to be like an energy drink, and it can't be Red Bull or Monster. It's got to be Celsius. And I was like, all right, let me look at this stuff. It's got some interesting flavors. It's delicious, and it's like zero. I think it's like very low calories. So sometimes if I'm like need to lock in, I'll have a Celsius. And there's a blue raspberry one as well, which I enjoy. But
Mm.
and then I tried this stuff. Uh,
Another show and tell.
yeah, the mud water. I
Oh,
got
I've
this.
seen the ads for
Yeah.
that. Is it good?
Never heard of it.
that's the stuff with mushrooms?
It's like that with mushrooms, pretty good. They
Okay.
they send you too much though. I have like, so if you ever need any extra mud water, I've got so much. It says recurring things. I'm like, there's no way I can drink all of this stuff. But yeah, I'm like, I'm a scientist for sure. But and like the nootropics, the benefits of the mushrooms. I don't know how grounded in science that stuff is,
Mhm.
but like it does seem to help with focus. Sometimes if I don't want to have a ton of caffeine, I'll have the mud water instead.
And then we got just two more questions. One's definitely more important than the other one. So, any bit of it,
Question.
you didn't see that one, huh?
Sorry.
I slid that one in there.
Yeah.
So, last two questions. So, you have someone who's interested in research and they're hoping to get more involved, but like you mentioned before, sometimes it seems really daunting and there's a whole lot of other stuff that, trickles down into it. What advice do you have for the PT student, the young clinician, or anyone in general who kind of needs patted on the back to get into this stuff?
Get into research.
Yeah.
I'd say don't make it. It's with anything, don't make it more than it is. Your first paper is not going to be your best paper, and it shouldn't be your best paper. It's probably going to be your worst paper. And that could means you're gonna. It's a process, just like anything. don't focus on outcome, focus on improvement. And, and that's a hard pill to swallow. And it, uh, you know, because you're usually used to doing good work and getting graded and getting, success, pretty, I'm saying immediate, but, um, publishing is kind of a war of attrition, and you're probably going to experience a lot of failure and a
Mhm.
lot of rejection. And that's not easy to kind of process because you put a lot of work into something and then you get, a rejection letter, or someone thinks your ideas need a little bit more work or retooling. And I think that fear, I think, causes people to freeze and to not submit. And it did early in my career. It was a little bit probably of anxiety of like, okay, I mean, I've, read publications when I was a student. I'm like, am I capable of doing this? Then you realize, what, everyone starts somewhere, right? And you don't start at the finish line, right? You start at the beginning, and realize that it's a journey. So I think the biggest thing is, don't make it more than it is. Realize you're probably not going to be very good at something the very first time you start it. That's odds are, but you can get better by sticking to it. And I think find a good mentor, a supportive mentor who's been on that journey, who can help guide you. And I think that's where, whether it's through your residency or through, if you really want to do, research as a main part of your life, a PhD, prepares you to, because, as a PT student, we don't train PT students to become researchers. We train PT students to become PTs, who can consume research. But if that's something you have an itch for, then there's, other areas to get that, additional training. But I'd say, yeah, the biggest thing is, don't make it more than it needs to be. And there's also spaces for publishing, even if you're not a PhD trained researcher. Like my early, and now, like, our mentor and colleague, Larry Cahalan, was publishing great research, years before he got his PhD. So you don't have to have a good PhD to write, or a PhD to write good papers. You just have to have good ideas and patience. And I think that's the big thing. It's just, yeah, like, don't make things more than it is. Realize you're not going to be very good at things. Probably going to experience some rejection. It's part of the process, and just stay committed and to getting better, and find somebody who can help guide you along that process.
A lot like life. A
Yeah,
lot like
yeah,
life. And
yeah,
then
very
the
true.
the question that I've been waiting for this whole interview.
Boy,
Uh, so how many Hawaiian shirts do you own?
it's a good question. I've got like 10 or 11.
I have some catching up to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Rich, I just want to say, you obviously had done this podcast for a while. It's taking really four of us, if you count David, who's going to edit this thing
That's right.
down, uh, to replace one of you. And so I just wanted to say thank you, in our first episode, for trusting us with this, for passing the baton to us. And I just hope that going forward we make you proud, and you don't feel like that we are just completely wrecking and ruining everything that you have accomplished and done with this podcast, the years that you did it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you guys for bringing me on, and being, the first guest is really, a esteemed honor, and especially with my connection to you, and it wasn't really all three of you guys. I had a chance to meet you a bit before coming on, and we joked about, like, the elves and Lord of the Rings, like, I must leave this land, right, and, transition, but it is. I think that's an important message too, that, like, there's, a thing about, like, creating, and realizing when it's your time to pass the baton. And I'm just so fortunate and so grateful that, I mean, there's four of you, David too. I know David because we worked
Mhm.
together for other things with the journal. But
He's here in spirit.
um, what's that?
He's here in
He's
spirit.
here in spirit, yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
About, of having a group that is going to take up the mantle, and really run with this in a new direction. And I'm so excited, to see how you guys take it, and that's, awesome to see, and especially, newer graduates, and that's kind of like the spirit of it, that and then hopefully, 5 years down the road, that, you guys look at doing the same, and giving opportunities to other people to grow, and take things in a new direction and make it super exciting in their own thing. So I'm so excited to see what you guys do. So proud of you guys, and so thankful. So yeah.
We very much appreciate you, and this has been a great time talking with you. And we're super excited for this special edition of the CPTJ Journal. Again, submissions are due December 31st. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Rich. We really appreciate you. I hope that we can continue to make you proud. And I'm excited to learn and grow from this. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there's a lot of cool people that we can interview and learn from, including you, of course.
Well, thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.